Hello and thanks for joining us on Encore. Coming up in today's show. France's leading lady of cinema sits down with France 24. Catherine Deneuve reveals her passion for Asian cinema in Burma. Blink and you'll miss him. Usain Bolt is the subject of a behind-the-scenes documentary as the athlete closes a chapter in his sporting career. And we immerse ourselves in a world of wit and beauty thanks to a new exhibition here in Paris devoted to Oscar Wilde. We're starting with a grande dame of cinema here in France, Catherine Deneuve. In a celebrated career spanning 6 decades, the actress has featured in more than 140 films, and she's also a strong supporter of the industry. Deneuve was a guest of honour at this year's Memory International Film Festival in Burma, a celebration of classic and contemporary cinema. France 24's Clovis Casali caught up with her at the festival.
Catherine Deneuve, it's a real pleasure to be with you in Burma. Few people know this, but you're a huge fan of Asian cinema. Can you tell me why?
Asian cinema really has its own style. I like Korean and Chinese directors. I'm really into the films of Yesanke and the Korean director Park Chan-wook. I love the worlds that they create. For me, these films show a different culture that's different to French cinema. These directors are really talented.
You were recently in Vietnam for Indochine. Can you tell me what that experience was like returning to Vietnam?
It went well. The astonishing thing is that the film itself is only now being distributed for the first time in Vietnam. Astonishing when you remember it's 25 years old.
Je n'avais jamais quitté l'Indochine. Nous vivions en paix et dans l'illusion.
Et vous? Pourquoi vous rêviez?
J'ai pas besoin de rêver. Tout ce que j'aime est ici, autour de moi.
You've worked with the greatest directors, François Truffaut, Roman Polanski, but I'd like to know who are the actors and actresses who impressed you the most?
I don't know if I can use the term impressed, but there certainly have been actors with whom I've had particular relationships. There was one actress I particularly liked, who I only worked with once. But I used to see her outside of work. That's Bernadette Lafont. When I don't know the actors or actresses before I work with them, well, you don't know if you're going to like them or not, and if you're going to get on with them or not, or click. So there have been some who I admire, but at the same time, when I worked with David Bowie in Tony Scott's film The Hunger, I didn't really have any notable encounters with him. I didn't really connect with him. On the other hand, when I was working with Daniel Auteuil, I was playing his sister, and that was really a memorable experience for me. Michel Piccoli too, and of course Gérard Depardieu, who I've made several films with, including quite recently. We just wrapped on a comedy a few weeks ago.
And it's quite surprising to notice that you've never done any stage work, no theatre. Why is that?
It's not the desire I'm lacking, it's the fear of doing it. No, I can't see myself doing it. I do go to the theatre though, to see friends who are acting and directing.
And it was also a deliberate choice never to direct?
I never really had a history of wanting to direct. I don't see myself directing a film. I have been lucky enough to work with filmmakers who really are auteurs. So for me, the screenplay is really wrapped up with the directing aspect. I wouldn't put myself in that category. I'm very happy being an actress.
Ça fait 3 fois en 4 mois que tu viens dans ce bureau, je peux pas dire que ça me fasse très plaisir de te voir.
Prends-moi pas, je parle pas aux faibles. C'est dans les foyers qu'il a pris le mauvais pli.
Aucun incident signalé ces derniers mois, tu gères mieux tes émotions. T'es d'accord avec ça? Prends les mains contre ton Mélanie.
You've worked with many young French directors. Do you think French cinema is still as influential as it was, say, in the 60s with the Nouvelle Vague?
I think French cinema is important, but there is of course a large handicap when it comes to getting French films out there, and that's the language. It's true that US cinema has really invaded our space. We can see that even here in Burma. In theatres right now, if movies are not Burmese, they're American or English speaking. So for French films, it's obviously a lot harder. But there are a lot of young French filmmakers and not so young filmmakers who have a lot of talent. We're lucky enough in France to have the kind of politics that helps cinema and lets young directors make their movies.
You've never been afraid to speak your mind. You did so in the 1960s to advocate for the right to abortion, more recently with the death penalty. What's your take on the situation of migrants in Europe and in France?
Beaucoup de compassion, beaucoup d'empathie
I have a lot of compassion and a lot of empathy, because you can imagine when you often see these people arriving, ending up in a town, in a new country, there's a lot of mistrust and fear too of seeing so many foreigners in such large numbers coming in. But I have to say, to leave your country, to leave your family and change your life, you really have to be in a totally hopeless situation. So it really affects me. It's such a serious situation and it concerns all of Europe. There's not really much I can do on my own. But it's true that when you see the migrant camp in Calais demolished, you ask yourself, how can we have accepted this for such a long time? And in such appalling conditions. No, what we say about France being a welcoming land, we're a bit far removed from that idea.
Catherine Deneuve, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
Merci à vous.
Next, we're staying with cinema, and a new documentary takes us behind the scenes in the world of professional athletics. Usain Bolt tracks the fastest man on the planet as he prepares for the Rio Olympics. Usain Bolt allowed filmmakers Gabe and Ben Turner to follow in his lightning footsteps for a year and a half as he trained for what's known as the triple-triple, 3 gold medals at 3 consecutive games. The athlete might make those sprints look easy in the stadium, but he says there's a lot of work involved.
The biggest superstar that this sport has ever had.
So I wanted to make people see what I went through to get to where I'm at today. When I watched the movie, it was so good because I could feel all emotions throughout everything, like I was reliving my life again.
He gets this dormant quietness about him. I think he's going through everything in his head.
Every year, I worry, am I still fast? Most people feel like what I do when I act weird and goofy on the camera, they feel like I'm pretending, I'm acting, but that's how I genuinely am.
I want to be remembered among the great athletes in the world.
He's a shining example of the best that we can be.
He's notorious for his wit and his way with words, but Oscar Wilde was more than just a sharp tongue. A new show at the Petit Palais in Paris brings us an insight into the man and his diverse body of work. Oscar Wilde, Insolence Incarnate, features texts, documents and an impressive collection of artwork. It's the first major exhibition entirely devoted to the writer who died here in France. Shirley Sitbon checks it out.
When Oscar Wilde was 23, he said this was ideal beauty, Guido Reni's Saint Sebastian. The Petit Palais exhibit shows art pieces Wilde commented as art critic, paintings that represented him and those he knew, rare relics, and documents crucial in his life. Like this business card that belonged to his lover's father, Marquis Queensberry. On it, the man accused Wilde of being a homosexual, which was illegal at the time in the UK. Later, the same card was used as evidence to convict the author and send him to prison. The exhibit retraces ordeals Wilde had to face and also his days of glory. Wilde wrote plays, poems, short stories including children's books, and a novel, The Picture of Dorian Gray. He was known for his wit, impertinent phrases, and openness that shocked many in the late 19th century.
Wilde was an icon for the young generation. He represented revolt against the establishment. He was a unique individual. He represented sensuality and integrity.
Wilde had a strong connection to France, where he lived for several years, even writing a play in French. He met the country's most influential and talented writers, Victor Hugo, Verlaine, and Mallarmé. In this painting by Toulouse-Lautrec, he's shown from the back watching a woman dancing.
Oscar Wilde was an ardent Francophile and a Francophone as well. He spoke French very well with a slight British accent, they say.
At the end of his life, after he left prison, Oscar Wilde was forced to live in exile. He then returned to France, where he died in poverty in 1900. Today, he rests among other famous figures in Paris's renowned cemetery, Père Lachaise. His tomb is so popular, it had to be shielded with glass to preserve it from admirers' kisses.
And we're finishing with artwork from the American painter, sculptor and photographer Cy Twombly. The Pompidou Centre here in Paris is hosting a retrospective of the late artist's work entitled 50 Years of Drawing. Remember, you can get more arts and culture on our website, and you can also follow Encore on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. There's more news coming up on France 24 after this.